You are about to enter the no-spin zone. The factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for watching us tonight. The liberal press says the Black Panther story is trumped up. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. It's amazing what has happened in Newsweek magazine. A once proud franchise, it has devolved into a troubled far-left publication that will soon be sold. Latest example of politics trumping news is a website article in Newsweek written by David Graham, a 24-year-old who says he's a reporter. Mr. Graham's article for Newsweek says the Black Panther story, whereby the Justice Department declined to prosecute allegations of voter intimidation, is a trumped-up attempt by conservatives to embarrass the Obama administration. He begins his article by saying, quote, "As voter intimidation exercises go, it wasn't much. It seemed like the sort of incident that happens at dozens of polling places every election day and then quietly recedes." So let me get this straight, Mr. Graham. Black Panthers holding clubs appear at dozens of polling places every election day in this country. Are you kidding me? I guess not. Mr. Graham goes on to say, quote, "Right-wing bloggers can't get enough of the story, and it's starting to make it into the mainstream press. So how did the incident become a replay of the Acorn scandal? But as in the Acorn case, the scandal is minimal. Much of the Acorn has been discredited, and the allegations against Obama flimsy." Well, somebody please explain to Mr. Graham, there have been at least 30 convictions of Acorn employees doing illegal things. 30. Also, allegations against Obama. I haven't heard any allegations against the president in the Black Panther case. It all centers on Attorney General Eric Holder. Two things. First, this young guy is apparently writing a commentary, not a news story, but it isn't labeled that way, about the Panther case. Does anyone at Newsweek realize that? And the guy's grossly distorting the situation. Also, Mr. Graham injects race. Quote, "The star witness in the case against the new Black Panther Party, Bartle wasn't exactly impartial. The white former Robert F. Kennedy aide has been an outspoken critic of Obama for some time. But things really blew open on July 6th when Bush Justice official J. Kristen Adams, who is white, suggested that Justice Voting Division avoided bringing cases where defendants were black and the plaintiffs were white," unquote. White? There's white again. So here we have Mr. Graham describing the color of the people involved in the case. Why would Newsweek allow that? Unless they want to make the story a racial deal, which they apparently do. Mr. Graham wraps up the article by saying, quote, "Like the Acorn case, it's not about a real investigation. It's about staging an effective piece of political theater that hurts the Obama administration." Now, that is simply a journalistic atrocity. This 24-year-old kid should go back to school and learn his craft. He obviously doesn't know what he's doing. And why would Newsweek assign him to an important story like this? Were there no high school seniors available? I mean, come on. This is a blatant political hatchet job penned by a so-called reporter. The real story here is that Eric Holder will not explain the Panther situation. He's hiding under his desk, and Newsweek is covering for him. And that's a memo. Now, for Top Story tonight, Megyn Kelly is mentioned in that Newsweek article as one who is driving the story unfairly. She joins us now. All right, we'll get to the Newsweek thing in a moment. But why do you feel so passionately about the Panther story when there's only 8 Panthers? It's a very minuscule organization.
Yeah, it's not about the Panthers. I got involved in this more seriously, more extensively, once the DOJ whistleblower came
on your show
and gave us his first television interview.
Right.
And the reason that I'm passionate about this case and this story, Bill, is because I believe in fidelity to the law. And I feel like your viewers know that about me. It doesn't matter whether it's left or right, conservative or liberal. I try to follow the law. I try to give you an honest interpretation of what the law requires. Whether it's from defending Justice Ginsburg to defending those crazies from the Westboro Baptist Church and their free speech rights. And it's not always popular, but I try to see honestly what the law requires. And what this whistleblower is alleging is that there is not fidelity to the law at the Department of Justice.
But remember,
right
according
now.
to Newsweek, he's a Bush guy.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so they try to discredit J. Christian Adams by saying he's a conservative, which apparently he is. So that's fine. So that's what you've got. He's a conservative. Based on that, and the fact that he was hired at the DOJ at a time where they tended to hire more conservative people, they dismiss his sworn testimony. They besmirch a lawyer of 18
Well, it
years.
doesn't matter. If he's a Bush guy, he's lying.
Okay, so but the viewers can make up their minds about whether they believe Jay Christian. But I'm just saying.
But let me stop you here.
That's fine. They can make up their minds one way. But the question is, why isn't there an investigation? Why don't people actually want to get down to the truth?
Okay, but I'm more interested in you and your passion here. Okay, so you are saying that because, in your opinion, from what you've heard and seen on the videotape, there was an illegality that took place in the Philadelphia polling.
Yes, because what people forget to say, they always say, oh, nobody actually testified to voter intimidation. Number one, that's not true. I've read the testimony, unlike almost everybody who comments on this case. And it wasn't just Bartle Bull. It was another guy named Chris Hill who testified that, in particular, there was a black poll watcher there who was very shaken up, who was visibly upset, who demanded that the police be called because he was called a race traitor and told if he stepped outside, there would be hell to pay. That was a black poll watcher. Plus, they testified at least 3 voters turned away.
All right, so there is enough evidence, and I've said that on the factor from the jump.
And even attempt at intimidation
to go and prosecute. All right, so we believe, Kelly and O'Reilly both believe, and even maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg would agree with us, maybe, all right, that there's enough evidence to go forward to prosecute the case. But it wasn't prosecuted. Right. But the real atrocity is the Attorney General blew it off and didn't even explain why.
Well, that's the thing.
He's hiding. Okay, so that's the fact. Enough evidence. Attorney General of the United States doesn't feel that the American people deserve an explanation of his behavior. So it's a big story.
Well, he's come out and said the facts in the law weren't there.
But that's bull.
But that's the problem.
That's bull. If he doesn't know they're there, then he doesn't deserve to be Attorney General, because they certainly are there.
I mean, that's the question.
Okay. So it's a big story. Voter intimidation, Attorney General apparently doesn't know the law, doesn't care.
And a policy, according to the DOJ whistleblower, a policy now with the DOJ
of
not pursuing cases where the defendant is black and the victim is white when it comes to voter intimidation.
That's what Adams says.
Right.
All right. Now, so Newsweek then goes in and says, you know what? Holder's right. And Kelly and O'Reilly, they don't mention me, but they're wrong. This is bull, shouldn't be prosecuted, and they assign a 24-year-old Cub Scout.
Yeah.
You didn't see him in his uniform, but I think we had him. Okay? Look at this guy. Look at him.
I know.
Look at him.
I know.
All right? And they assign him, and he's supposed to be writing a news story, and he writes this hit piece.
Listen,
you react how?
I say that's fine. Newsweek can hire whoever it wants. You know, I will stack my 9 years of the practice of law and my experience as a journalist up against his 1 year working at Newsweek.
Not even one. He was hired in February. Any
day of the week. So if he wants to tell me he knows better than I do what would qualify as voter intimidation under the law, that's fine.
Why did Newsweek, number one, assign a guy who's in way over his head, okay, and number two, allow this to go on their website, which is a blatant political piece, with white? Have you ever seen anybody just three whites
describe
in there?
the race of the witnesses in the case?
Right.
Yeah.
They're white.
Yeah.
Okay, so why would Newsweek do that?
I really think that the reason Newsweek is covering this the way it is, and the reason others in the left-wing press in particular are covering it the way they are, which is not at all or to downplay it, is it doesn't fit their narrative. You know, I do think some of the left-wing press is in the bag for President Obama, and they don't like to report on stories that don't look good for the White House. I think that's been pretty established.
But Obama doesn't have anything to do with it other than he supports Holder.
You know, other than Holder, you know, also Holder and the.
But you haven't heard any accusations against Obama, have you? I haven't.
Not against Obama in particular, but there is one former Department of Justice attorney who suggests the White House visitor logs show that the White House was potentially weighing in on this decision. But that doesn't necessarily tie it to President Obama.
Well, look, Obama has not repudiated the decision. He hasn't said anything about it, and he obviously thinks Holder's doing a great job.
But the problem here is that not only does the left-wing press not apparently want to report on it, but you got pieces like this that detract, that criticize people who are reporting on it.
Like you.
Right, and they accuse you of race baiting, and it's a sensitive subject.
No, it's more than that. It's that you are a far-right kook bent on bringing down President Obama. That's why you did this reporting, Kelly. Don't you know that?
I didn't see that in the Newsweek piece, but I guess it was between the lines. Listen, racism, being a racist, is the worst thing you can say about somebody. I mean, it is such a charged accusation. And I really think people should be very careful before they level that.
Well, that's what we're going to come up right behind you with the Tea Party NAACP. That's what that's all about.
But I have to say, as a journalist, I feel an obligation, if there's news, to cover it.
Okay, but just summing up, you are entirely comfortable with your position that this case should have been prosecuted by the federal government, and the reason it hasn't been is still flimsy.
That's how it looks to me as a lawyer.
All right. Megyn Kelly, everybody. You can catch her at 1 p.m. on her own program. 2 hours of Kelly. If that's not enough, you can see her here on The Factor. All right? Okay, thank you. Next on the rundown, the president of the NAACP, as I said, continues branding the Tea Party as racist. Dana Perino and Leslie Marshall on that.